Hi, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Dizzo's Dead podcast.
3, 2, 1. 3, and let's go. Are you ready? 3,
I think people like
2,
that. They got to see the little
1.
behind the scenes of how we record this.
So
here.
you are aware, Dizzo, that when we last recorded a podcast,
yeah, that was
your
on there.
superior broadcasting skills from not
The
Syracuse
State University of New York at Oswego, yes.
forced you or caused you to not edit out your lead in, the 3, 2, 1.
I was in a hurry. I wanted to get the pod out there because I knew you had some hot takes that people need to take in. And
I generally have hot takes on this podcast.
I did not edit out the beginning of it, which I
3,
heard.
2, 1.
So, I'm just glad on the back end there wasn't anything we said at the end when we were done. I was a little leery on that.
Yes, or on the front end, because when I got in my pickup to drive home later on and listen to the podcast, I was thinking furiously whether I said anything. That guy's a moron. Hey, idiot.
You know what? We say that stuff anyway, so some people are morons.
It's like when a local television station FOIA'd my text messages to a higher ed board member, and I had the words, "They're a bunch of morons," at NDSU in the text messages. But be that as it may.
Yeah. What are you gonna do? Anyway, we're back for round 2 of realignment chatter. We were here a week ago when the Oklahoma and Texas stuff was just brimming, and there was a lot of bristling going on nationwide. It wasn't necessarily vetted out, but there was plenty of reporting on it, as we talked about, that it looked like this was going to happen.
You know what they say, Dom? Where there's smoke, there's fire.
Well, Monday,
which is appropriate for today, by the way,
no doubt,
outside.
Smoke outside. Whew. So Monday, the official, I love the letterhead that came out, a joint statement from Texas and Oklahoma, who never joined in anything, to say that they are ending their grant of rights agreement before 2025 and are seeking admission to the Southeastern Conference. That is a whole other story, which I like to get into with a fellow Dragon alum and Bob Holsby just taking the torch to ESPN, which is
fantastic,
hysterical. I do want to spend some time, though. I interviewed Matt Larson yesterday, partly on the Bison getting a football game at US Bank Stadium, something you had reported first back in February. So awesome job on the scoop on that. I know it wasn't necessarily surprising when you heard the news on that. I did ask Matt, his on camera, about where things are at with FBS. And Matt said again, pretty forthright, that he believes that the hires that North Dakota State has made, obviously the indoor practice facility that's coming, that they are positioned that if a phone call came from an FBS conference, that they are ready to do so. What do you take from that first off?
Well,
and we'll go from there.
I think they've been fairly consistent in saying that they believe their facilities, and especially what I've heard out of the department, especially the practice facility, it's at $37 million. Yep. I think that in addition to helping them recruit and win football games, they can look at that if an FBS conference is either out looking around or if NDSU wants to start shopping themselves, which no evidence that they want to do that. Let's make that clear. I'm not saying they're doing that, but if they wanted to, they could look at that facility and say, look, we just raised almost $40 million for an indoor practice facility, which would put us probably ahead of some of the Mountain West and certainly the MAC and Sunbelt and those types of schools in investment in facilities. And so I think that's what Matt Larson was getting at. Not that they're, ready to go, not that, just that what they've done over time is invest in the football program, invest in staff, do things as an FBS program would do them to the best of their abilities as an FCS program. And so that would show that they're ready to move if a phone call was to ever come, which he says has not come to him.
Now, point on that, and I think you can expound on this. Normally, the phone calls don't necessarily go to the athletic director, right? They would go to the president's office.
I don't know.
When you think on that?
All conference stuff begins and ends in the president's office.
Yep.
And so you would think that would be the case. However,
AD's got to be involved.
I don't know how. I don't know the process. I don't know if Dean Brashani's cell phone is going to ring first, or if Matt Larson's office phone is going to ring first. I do know that there's going to be no emails exchanged in the era of open records, which is open records are good for the media and good for the public, but that's not going to happen. So it's going to be phone calls or something.
So I want to dive in a little bit further, and this is maybe a dangerous area to go down, but you and I both, and you more than I, have been exchanging, I would say, Twitter messages exchanges with various fans over you for the last 6 months since you've been diving into this, myself included. The rebuttals that we get, and yesterday it was a high point for me. I decided to dive in. Normally I stay above the fray, but yesterday I don't know why I was ready to.
We've always viewed you as being above the fray, Dom.
I was ready to get on Twitter. I was ready to get into this, and I'm curious though, and I wanted to read some of these, and you can respond because I know you've had and you have responded on some of these that we got yesterday on it, and some are from football fans that saw the football scoop or the Reddit tweet that went out that I put out there, and in the interview I put out with Larson on this, and various ones are all over the place. Either from why would they do it? You've knocked this one out of the park about playing in a bowl game on December 23rd, which I think is all the more out of date in my mind. One response I got was for a 6-6 season, or you can travel to those places anytime, Dom. We really want to be a program that's happy with 6 wins a year.
Okay, can I stop you there?
Yeah, go for it.
Why do you think NDSU would be a 6-win team?
Right.
If this is coming from an NDSU fan, then what? I mean, have you been watching what's happened the last 10 years? Do you follow college football closely enough that you don't think NDSU would be competitive immediately in the Mountain West? NDSU would win the MAC. If NDSU's team was in the MAC right now, and I know that you have to take into account the difference in scholarships, NDSU, if it tomorrow went to the MAC and got 22 more scholarships, it would win the MAC. It would be an 11-win team. It would win the Sun Belt. It would win the Conference USA.
Yes.
I don't know that it would win the Mountain West. I don't know that it would win the AAC. I don't think that the Bison would. But this idea that if they go FBS, that there would be a 6-win team is dumb.
There you go.
I mean, give your program more credit than that.
Another one said, I just don't see the Bison ever making an FBS playoff field. I think it's much more likely they struggle at the FBS level and the Fargo Dome becomes a ghost town. So we're going to have to agree or disagree on this one.
Okay. Again, why do you think they would struggle?
Yeah.
In a group of 5 conference, we're not talking about the Big Ten or the Big 12. Let's forget that one. Yeah. The SEC, ACC, the Pac-12.
Yeah.
We're talking about a group of 5. So if you're a college football fan of any knowledge at all, and this is where I was wrong, whatever it was, 20 years ago now, or when they said NDSU is going to go Division I, I went, well, that's dumb because you're never going to outspend Nebraska or Minnesota. That was never the point.
Right.
And it isn't now. And that's where I've been educated. And I'm much closer to this in the middle of it than your average fan on Twitter. I understand that. But all Division I is not created equal. If the guy you're referring to in that tweet, I believe, is a UND fan, and that's okay. But my point I'm trying to make is all Division I hockey created equally?
Nope.
Is Bemidji State the same as UND? 2 programs, 50 miles apart? Are they anywhere in the same universe at all? No, but they're in the same division.
Same with basketball.
Yes.
I mean, there's 350 college basketball teams.
We all know that Duke and NDSU are not the same in basketball. No. But NDSU has the chance to get to the tournament. And, hey, wait, they played Duke a couple of years ago.
Yes.
And that's the whole point of looking at the college football playoff and saying, okay, is there 1 or 2 spots that could possibly be taken up by a group of 5 school? The answer is going to be yes when they expand to 12 teams. And, oh, by the way, there's no guarantee they're going to stop at 12 long term because there's a lot of money to be made with a college football playoff. And we all know TV dictates everything. We can get back to that later as it pertains to the Big 12. But if there's a spot or 2 open, then why couldn't NDSU aspire to be a team that makes that? I'm not saying it's going to happen every year. It might not happen once every 5 years. But that 6th year, when NDSU is winning the Mountain West and they are 11-1
or 10-2
or 10-2,
Yeah.
and they're the highest ranked Group of 5 program in the country. Why can't it be NDSU?
Yeah,
Have
you're
you
right.
been watching what they've done in FCS for the last 10 years?
I think also off of that is the news of what the FCS is talking about this week from various media days, from the Big Sky to the Colonial to the Valley. And the biggest thing that came out of there, Mike, and you and I are both shaking our heads and eye rolling on this, is expanding the 24-team playoff. And that is a full stop for me.
Yes.
And I think you're on the same boat with me on this. I don't want to speak for you, but routinely, I know people maybe roll their eyes at my bracketology, but routinely, teams 20 through 24 is a struggle to get in there. Kolpak will look at me and say, are we really putting this team in? Like, who else do you want to put in?
Right.
And we went through this in April with Missouri State.
Right. And we know that this last spring was odd because so many teams dropped out. So maybe it's not the perfect example, but they did reduce the field from 24 to 16. And the last couple teams in, it was a toss-up.
Yep.
It was, well, God, who else are we going to put in there?
According to our colleague Sam Herder, they called UC Davis and they said no.
No. So they had to go out and find another day. Okay, Missouri State's in or whoever's in. So if that's what FCS is going to become, which is, we're mad because there's not enough at-large bids for a middle-of-the-pack Missouri Valley Conference
or Ohio
team.
Valley or CAA team.
Right.
Yeah.
If that's what's driving FCS, then if you're a Bison fan, why do you want to be a part of that? What we saw in the spring and going back to last fall was the teams at the bottom of conferences were driving
calling
decisions.
the shots. They were
calling the shots. NDSU had very little
they had none autonomy.
In what they wanted to do.
James Madison had none. JMU's still mad at the CAA because of that.
And there are hard feelings at NDSU. And so, I mean, NDSU would have been happy to play 3 or 4 fall games and just call it good and move on to 2021. There were programs out there saying, no. Nobody can play fall games because it's not fair. We want everybody to play in the spring. And NDSU's going, but we want to play in the fall. And as it turned out, they tried and couldn't, so they ended up playing in the spring. But it's the JMU and NDSU are by far the 2 best programs the last 5 years, the 2 biggest brands, the biggest followers, the most fans, and they had no say in what they did last spring.
And I think that's a huge part of the frustrations and why both are looking on the horizon. I've heard that term now a couple times from NDSU. What's on the horizon? What's on the horizon for us? And that's, I think, a great point and a great way to say it. And you're right. I don't think the hard feelings are going to go away anytime soon at either school on that.
No, James Madison is openly just angry. And NDSU, from the folks I've talked to, they were not thrilled either with the way. And it's not, we have to remember that things were, when we look back, everybody says, well, I guess they should have played some games in the fall. At the time, it didn't seem the wise thing to do. Right. I mean, and
both schools did try. James Madison called a time.
Right, but I mean,
you're saying
as the whole division,
hindsight's
2020. Hindsight's 2020, and so you can't look at it that way. But both programs were trying to play games, and they couldn't do it. And then some of their conference members, they were tapping out.
Yep.
Oh, we're out, done.
Yep.
And some of the better programs in the Valley.
What we've been told, you and I both been told, Northern Iowa and South Dakota State.
UND tapped out early.
Did not want to play. Towson did not want to play.
Towson was totally bailed out.
They did not play at all.
Which I found funny because Rob Ambrose, the head coach, was talking in his CAA
media day,
preseason media day, how they can't find FBS games at Towson because nobody wants to play them. And when I was watching that, I was going, well,
you don't want to play.
Didn't want to play games at all. But be that as it may.
I know we're not trying to sit here and convince people that people are going to think whatever on this. I think there are holes in those theories on that. And I'll go back as well. You often remind me on the TV side of this that those December 19th, 18th, 20th bowl games are more highly rated than the FCS championship game every single time, outside of when they put it on ABC. It was on network TV for the January 2020 game, the Bison James Madison game. Every other time, those bowl games are outrating the FCS title game.
And that's the other thing you have to keep in mind is, okay, so if the college football playoffs is a once-in-a-decade thing, that you're going to have a good enough team to make a run, the fallback is you get a bowl game. Yeah. And again, as we talked about last time on the pod, give yourself credit, NDSU fans, because you turn out for games.
Yes.
And that's relevant this week because of the announcement of the Eastern Washington game at US Bank Stadium. And Matt Larson was on with you, as we've all talked about before, that they've had teams or stadiums in other cities call them now and say, boy, hey, would you like to come and play a game in Dallas? Would you like to come and play a game in wherever, Vegas?
Yep. It's a ample opportunity
because fans travel so well.
They bring 30,000.
So how that plays into December bowl games is, you get a better bowl game because you travel. It's all about the money. Mm-hmm. It's all about money. So if you want to go to Frisco, you don't think the Frisco Bowl is going to say, NDSU,
come on
you're
down.
In every year you want to be in. We'll just write a contract saying, unless you get a better offer, you're automatically in. We'll just call it the NDSU Bowl.
Well, they do that. Certain bowls do that with Army and Navy. Hawaii has one. BYU has one. They all have a specific agreement with the bowl.
And the conferences have tie-ins.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. And yeah, are there downsides to possibly going to FBS? Sure.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've had people say, and I think it's a fair concern but doesn't NDSU lose that special thing that it has going? That
no doubt about that.
It's the king of FCS. They win national championships. They get on ESPN. They're never going to have those things happen again if they go FBS. My answer is, but okay, if they stay FCS, which they're likely to do, to reiterate, because they haven't had an invite, there's really no place for them to go. It's going to be the same old every year. It's a bad. This last spring
was bad.
Was as bad of an NDSU team as we've seen on. NDSU had a B team on the field by the end of the year, and they still got to the national quarterfinals, and easily. If they would have handed the damn ball off to Hunter Lupke instead of running a read option with Cam Miller, the poor kid was in over his head. If they would have just handed it off to Hunter Lupke or Dom Ganella, they win the game and they get to the semifinals in a year when they were just not very good by their standards.
Yep. Well, where do we see the next turns on this? Obviously, there's a heck of a lot more that's going to come out, and that maybe is a good segue to what we're going to talk about with Bowlesby and the Big 12, because obviously my question to Larson, and I know Greg Media's done some great work out, and James Madison as well, is that, hey, we're here. We think we're ready, but it's one thing you can only go and slip your resume to somebody, but you gotta get invited.
Yes.
It's not like, hey, knock on the door, hey, come get us. That's not how it works.
Well, but I think you can make it be known what you want to happen, and I think NDSU is doing that.
James Madison, we know.
James Madison for sure is doing that, no doubt about it. And maybe there's others.
Our friends in the WAC.
I still think that the eventual goal for a place like Sam Houston is to get into. Or to turn the whole WAC into an FBS conference, whatever FBS looks like in 5 years. And so NDSU, I think, with the right invitation, we've just pounded all these points on the ground. They would certainly take a hard look. And Matt Larson told you, it doesn't mean it would be an absolute yes. Doesn't mean it would be an absolute no, but we would certainly talk about it.
And they need to. Now, let's talk about your fellow Dragon alum, Bob Bowlesby.
Love this cat. Love this cat.
So I'm sure many that listen know the backstory. I'll try to go through this as quick as possible. That a couple of their stories have come out that it wasn't just Texas and OU saying, hey, we'd like to. Apparently ESPN has been, Oz behind the curtain, pulling the strings, so to speak, on this. And it's been going on for 6 months on this to get them out of the Big 12 and into the SEC.
And what did ESPN say about this, by the way, when asked about it?
Can I read something out of the letter that Bowlesby said?
Yes.
It's just the whole thing has been a complete articulation of deception. I love that. I love
This is my flamethrower sound.
Apart from a single vague allegation that ESPN has been actively engaged in discussions with at least one other unnamed conference, which ESPN disputes, your letter consists entirely of unsubstantiated speculations and legal conclusions. That's from ESPN's retort on what Bowlesby said, that this has been in the works for a while.
You're a TV guy. You've been involved with these rights discussions. So is this the way it works? Is on one hand, you say, we control the sports world. We control kickoff times. We control conferences. We control everything, timeouts. We control it all because we are the all-powerful television.
TV time.
And then when somebody comes back and says, well, you guys are controlling it, you go, oh, no, we're not. No, we're not. That's illogical conclusions.
Okay, all the first stuff you said is right. I don't know about this. I don't know about this though.
So you don't think that ESPN is totally moving the piece around to get what they want?
I totally believe that.
Yes, of course.
I totally believe that's happening. But the gall of this is surprising to me. That's the part where the SEC and ESPN, which are contractually now at the hip for $300 million.
It's one and the same.
Starting in 2 years. That, I guess I was more Pollyanna than I needed to be. That was surprising. The part that will be really intriguing now for this upcoming season, which starts, next week, is that people still have to work at ESPN with the Big 12 for the next couple of years. Yeah. How's that going to go over?
Fantastic.
So
good for them.
So now that this is...
And God bless Bob Bowlesby, by the way.
That was pretty good.
MSUM Dragon alum, fellow. I enjoyed the absolute blowtorch that he took to ESPN. Fantastic.
You've read a lot of stuff. I know you've talked to some people as well. What do you, in your mind, what does the Big 12 do? Because now the American, by the way, looks like they might be the hawk and swoop in and take the Big 12. Not the other way around.
Oh, it's nuts. I don't know. Who knows? Anything's on the table now with the way these things are going. Yep. And the commissioner of the AAC,
Mike Oresko,
is very aggressive.
Yep.
And he for a long time has been trying to expand the AAC.
He wants them as a Power 5
to turn them into a Power 5 or at least a group of 5 plus.
Yeah.
To get a couple of those college football playoff spots and position that conference. And so if he does that, then do they become a Power 5?
They would. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
So there would still be a Power 5, and there'd still be a group of 5.
Well, there might be a Power 4 if they if the Big 12 absolves.
Well, no, but the AAC would replace it though.
If they that's another super conference then of 16
right.
or
so it would be
20
so you'd have a
teams.
Power 5 and a group of 4, I guess it would be, because the AAC would leave the group of 5.
And we talked about this, and I don't want to rehash a lot of stuff we talked about, but the Big Ten's got to do something. The Big Ten is sitting there saying, well, we're not going to let the SEC just go and have its day. We have to respond.
And the only logical play is you have to get Notre Dame. If you're the Big Ten and the SEC has done what it's done, you have to get Notre Dame into the Big Ten.
What are the chances of that happening in your lifetime?
Boy, I don't know, but I'd love it.
Notre Dame is as much independent, and somebody wrote this, so I'm totally ripping it off, as much as they are a Catholic school. That's how they're identified with their football independence as being a Catholic school. That's their identity is being a football independent.
That they can do what they want because they are Notre Dame.
And by the way, they also have their own TV deal with NBC. That is a monster one as well. That I don't know if they'd be willing to share that with anybody.
But there's always ways though to get. I mean,
they're right.
There's always carve outs.
I didn't think Texas and Oklahoma would be members of the SEC.
My God. But okay, so if all of that happens, if the AAC swoops in and takes the Big 12, then maybe there's no movement.
Yeah.
Although I find it hard.
There's no way the Big Ten stands pat.
No movement at the lower level. No movement at the group of 5 level other than the A. Yeah. I mean, could it work out if that's the case? I find it hard to believe because we're entering another period of movement here in college football. Yeah. And so that Boise State's on the phone. You know that BYU is on the phone.
Colorado State, you mentioned them last week, is probably on the phone now.
Right? Yep. I mean, they take us.
Yep.
Or we'll go to the Pac-12 or whatever. But the cell phone bills are going to be tremendous.
The lawyer bills are going to be tremendous.
That's probably a better, probably a better example.
Let's wrap with this, because I had this thrown out at me as well, and I'm sure you've seen it, that, well, the Power 5 is just going to break away from the NCAA and go do its own thing. I don't think that's going to happen, Mike, simply because they don't want to mess with the golden goose that is the basketball tournament. And that
makes it hard.
That's the $6 billion elephant in the room, where you have the magic of NDSU playing North Dakota State or George Mason making the Final Four.
But now wait a second, though. But the money there is being made by the NCAA and the television networks. It's not being made by the conferences.
No, that goes to CBS.
Right.
Or CBS goes to the NCAA on that.
Right.
Yes.
And so why does Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, care if the basketball tournament gets gutted? He doesn't care because his money comes from football. The Texas OU move was all about football, and the coach at Kansas.
Yeah.
I mean, football drives revenue at Kansas more than basketball does, which I still find is amazing, but it's all because of the TV money.
Do you think they really would mess with the NCAA basketball tournament? That's the part
But follow the money.
Yeah.
Who makes the money off it?
The NCAA does.
Right. I mean, these guys, Greg Sankey, Sankey clearly doesn't care about the NCAA.
No. He's ready to. He's doing the Bowlesby blowtorch to the NCAA because he wants name, image, likeness out there. He wants more autonomy for all players. Boy, I've always been a staunch thought that wasn't going to happen simply because they didn't want to mess with the basketball.
But they share the money, but it's a pittance.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about North Dakota State's winning a game, the units are.
And Oral Roberts get
right. I mean,
what $5 million or something like that.
It's not very much comparatively speaking. It's a huge deal for a place like Oral Roberts that doesn't have football.
You wrote in a column that we would not recognize college athletics in 5 years. We might not recognize it next year.
Right.
Yep. Next year, it may be unrecognizable.
I got a message from a college football person that said 5 years. I don't recognize it from 2 months ago.
Right?
So I said, okay. So I think I went and actually changed that after I was told it's not the same as it was 2 months ago.
I would have a hard time on the basketball deal because that's where you mentioned it. Everybody has
so much
has
fun.
A chance to get in, and if they were to close that off, that'd be difficult.
But something would evolve from it.
Well, then you could say, well, you'll have the Power 5 basketball tournament, and it'll just be, you know what I mean?
That could be
the Big 12, the SEC, ACC, Big 10.
Maybe. I still think that I don't know that everybody cares that much about the basketball tournament. I don't think that.
Well, we know they care about it because of the money it makes.
I don't.
Right?
Let me rephrase. I don't think that Duke cares that NDSU gets in the basketball tournament.
No,
I just don't.
You're absolutely right. They care if other ACC members get in.
Yes, Alabama wants nothing to do with NDSU and football.
Nope.
But Duke doesn't care about NDSU and basketball. They're fine if they play them. Whatever. It just doesn't matter.
Man, it's just fascinating. It really is. We actually have games coming up to talk about, which will be. I don't know if that'll be nearly as entertaining of what's happening off the field right now.
I think it's going to be a break from all this stuff. I mean, you have said a lot that the last couple months in college athletics have just been mind-blowing. And so it might be okay on September 2nd, whatever date it is, 4th, whatever, I don't even know what day it is, when NDSU hosts Albany. And we can all just kind of sit back and go, all right, a game. And frankly, last spring, Dom.
Yeah.
It was a little bit being at a game, going. At least there's a game on the field. I don't have to think about everything else going on. I can look around the stadium and see 4,000 people, and it's weird. But at least there's a game going on.
I got to read this. I just want to read this letter again before we go. I have absolute certainty that ESPN has been involved in manipulating other conferences to go after our members.
Wow.
Fantastic. Bowlesby said ESPN is actively engaged in discussions with at least one other conference regarding that conference, inducing additional members of the Big 12 to leave the Big 12 conference.
God. Just, and that's all because ESPN doesn't want to
share.
Right. I mean, they
because I believe they have a TV deal, the Big 12 does, with ESPN and Fox, which would complete, and if they get out of that, and if the Big 12, I think you retweeted this, if the Big 12 dissolves, they get out of $1 billion.
Yes.
$1 billion.
Yes. It's just numbers are astronomical. It's just nuts.
And people just say, hey, you know what? Just play the games. Just go out, you know what I mean? Just shut up and play the games, right? Yep. I don't care about all this stuff
we don't want
just talked
kneeling.
About for half an hour.
We don't want guys getting paid. No. We don't want anything except guys to play football and keep their mouth shut. That's all we want as fans. And that's not me talking. Yeah. That's your average college football fan talking.
Has the percentage, and you use the word moonshot, the first column you wrote on that, has it changed from December of 2020 to July 2021 on North Dakota State? And FBS?
No. I think that the chances of a phone call being made have increased. I don't know that the chances of anything coming from that phone call have increased. And so maybe the odds have, gotten a little bit better just because a phone call might be made. Yeah. I just don't know if the pieces are going to be able to fall into place the way they have to fall into place for NDSU.
And as we laid out last week, I know we got to go, there are still a ton of challenges at home in North Dakota on the NDSU front that they have to navigate.
I think so.
I think that might be the biggest thing of anything.
I have been told by a couple of people that I wouldn't worry about that because Fargo legislators are powerful and the governor is a Fargo NDSU guy, and that they would find a way to get through all of that minefield. I'm not so sure because of the Imperial Cass County and the Grand Forks thing, but I think it would be a tough deal. But I was told that's they'd make it happen somehow.
Right, what you just said. When there's a will on this, there's a way to find out if it's going to happen. Yep. So this was fun. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
All right, so now you can listen to both these shows. Take out the 3, 2, 1 on the first one, but you can combine it and you listen to all of our realignment chatter.
Can I do my TV great. God voice again?
Go for it. That was hilarious.
I'll save it for next time.
Next time.
I'll save it. Yes.
So for Mike McFeely from the Forum of Fargo Moore, Dom Izzo, thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you next time.